You're listening to the Churros y Tácticas Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Churros y Tácticas Podcast. This is your host, Kiyan, Sobhani. It is early Monday morning, and I am joined by, as usual, sorry, I'm a bit under the weather as well. I should say that off the bat. But I am joined, as usual, the great Diego Llorijn. Diego, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing better than you, Kiyan. Let's put it that way.
This has been a trend now for, what, 2, 3, 4 months?
4 months. It's and I gotta say, every time we start this podcast, I admire your ability to still say churros y tácticas with as much enthusiasm as you were doing before the summer when you guys were winning Champions Leagues and Ligas. You wouldn't notice, by the way, you start the show, that you guys are 19 points clear of La Liga leaders, which are wait, that's us, right? Us.
Look, if I were to let football and the results of football dictate the happiness of my life, I'm in big trouble.
There you go.
So as soon as that lost to Villarreal, I watched a couple other La Liga games, and I spent time with my son and my wife, and you know that's what matters, right?
That is absolutely
of course
right.
when we're winning, that philosophy goes out the window, and you know that's all. Football is amazing. Yeah, it's not been a good. This weekend is. It's so weird that the crisis extended again to this weekend.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Yet it wasn't surprising, you know.
Given Real Madrid's form, or the fact that you guys played Villarreal side that just got knocked out of the Copa del Rey, or that had to redeem themselves, a Villarreal side that never managed to win in the Bernabeu, something historic.
A Villarreal team also that, you know, defensively, this is not the same Villarreal team from last season. That didn't, you know, was one of the best defensive lines in Europe's top leagues. Mm-hmm. They haven't been able to replace Musacchio, or even Bailly, you know, from a couple seasons ago, for that matter. And yet they looked really good defensively. And I think this is the point. It doesn't matter who we play. It doesn't matter if it's Fuenlabrada. It doesn't matter if it's Numancia, Girona, who actually have been really good. Or anyone, Barcelona, it doesn't matter. It's the same. It's like, you know, and I've said this before, it's like when FIFA, you lose like 20 games in a row after winning 20 games in a row, and you just can't explain why. It feels like that. And even though we were at halftime, it was 0-0, we were playing good. The first half was really good. It was the first game after that closed door session, you know, that 90 minutes that Zidane just closed the doors and just cleared the air with everybody. It was the first game after that. I thought the response in the first half was good. The energy was good. The defensive coverage was good. The midfielders were all working hard. Yet, even still, at halftime, there was something in the air that just kind of screamed at you and said, yeah, it was a good first half, but as the longer this stays scoreless, the more uncomfortable it's going to get. The more the Bernabeu is going to start cringing. They're going to get restless.
The harder the rain was falling.
I mean, symbolically, but literally.
Yeah.
And also, actually, was it raining, or were you just saying that symbolically?
No, it was. It
was, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, symbolic and physical rain, raining upon you, and that hits the players. It cuts right through them. Like, it's a real thing. And they start getting uneasy. They start making mistakes, and all that good performances. If you don't capitalize on that window of good play in the first 45 minutes, the mental pressure weighs in on you. And then, just like we did against Betis, we threw everyone forward. We conceded, and that's just a really worrisome trend that has been.
So, is there? I didn't get to see the match because of work engagements, but was there a kind of were there murmurs going through the stadium as the time kept ticking on? Were the fans getting increasingly nervous as the scoreline remained 0-0, or what was the atmosphere like?
I wasn't physically at this game, but
but you kind of sense it.
You sense it.
Yeah.
Of course, you sense it. Yeah, I mean, this is something, and this is a completely flipped mentality from last season. Where last season,
yeah,
if you asked what was in the air at the Bernabeu, if we were losing by 1 goal, 2 goal, if it was tied, you sense that we would figure it out. We would just get it done somehow, some way. Whether it was a last-second corner, a last-second, heroic moment from whoever. You sensed that, and everyone felt that. The opposing team felt it, we felt it, the crowd felt it, the neutrals felt it. This season, no one feels that way. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Like, once you get so deep in this mental rut, you're kind of out of solutions. Like, we have tangible tactical solutions, but mentally, none of us are in the position the players are in to kind of, it's easier for us to say do this differently. I think mentally, that's underrated, that aspect of it.
Yeah. It's inexplicable. I mean, it's almost. And I might catch some heat for saying this, but I almost feel sorry having to translate Zizou's press conferences in the post-match, because he doesn't have the explanations for it. You sense his frustration, his inability to kind of give a decent, clarification as to why and what is happening. It's just disparity, and in the meantime, you have your hero from last season, of course, Ramos. Instead of being out on the pitch, he's on Instagram showing off his latest, and I should add, questionable fashion. What should I call it? Fashion, advice, or just fashion? Yes. So it's nuts. It's nuts. Again, this is regurgitating what we say week in, week out at this point. But who would have thought 5 months ago, that, at this time we would have been at a historic, because that's not, this has to be mentioned as well, Kiyan, a historic distance between Barca and Madrid. 19 points has never happened in history. I was going over some of the stats, and I think in 2011-12, there was a 16-point gap between Barca and Madrid when Tito Vilanova took over from Pep Guardiola, and the season previous there was another, I think, a 12-point gap between the two clubs. But this is crazy. I mean, it's you guys are actually closer to the relegation spots than us, and it's I don't know, man. And I guess to add fuel to the fire, where does it end? You have the Copa del Rey match now against Leganés, who it seems that, at least from my social media feeds, that I'm the only one who gives any sort of credibility to Leganés, who I thought it played a decent enough first half of the season, and of course managed to knock out Villarreal. So I think that's a tough matchup for Real Madrid, given the way that they're performing, and then the dreaded Champions League battle against a heavily informed and at this point you have to say favorite Paris Saint-Germain.
Everything you said is true. I where does it end is the big question, because we thought it would end a long time ago. It's funny because like a lot of the things that weren't going well in the beginning of the season for anybody, they all normalized except for Real Madrid's problems. Like Atletico were really bad to start the season, and I remember talking to Jeremy about the Calderon, and he, both him and I were saying, Real Madrid's problems are bad, but they're not as bad as Atletico's. Real Madrid has, bright future. They'll turn it around. They have gears. Atletico's in a huge problem. Atletico normalized. They've been playing well. Luis Suarez was in a massive rut.
Huge.
That's completely disappeared now.
Also, exactly. Thank you. I'm happy you mentioned that, because I still feel I need to convince some people who say that he's done for, and next season we need to get Griezmann in because it's over with. I mean, he's back 100%.
He is definitely back, and all those things normalized. The only thing that hasn't normalized yet has been Real Madrid's form. We've been waiting, just looking at our watches, just waiting. For Real Madrid. Okay, today's probably the day they finally go into that gear. We saw it for like a second against Sevilla for one half. We've seen it sporadically. We saw it in Anoeta earlier this season. We've seen it against Dortmund. And
first half against Barca was good.
First half against Barca was good. I don't think it was as great as many people thought it was. I think it was good relative to what happened in the second half. But, to me, it was just a respectable first half performance. That was what it was. It wasn't unbelievable. It wasn't bad. It was good. They were probably the better team of the two in the first half, but then the second half was so bad that it didn't matter what happened in the first half.
It's true. I mean, yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, no, I was going to say, like, some of those things that those moments that were good this season, I think the important trend is that they all in some way deviated from this current diamond scheme. So in Anoeta, that was the game where Bale and Mayoral played, and both of them played really well. In Dortmund, it was the game where Bale played, and he was amazing. In the Sevilla game, in a time where Real Madrid averages the most crosses in the league, that was the one game where they had like 20 less crosses than their season average, and they completely blitzed Sevilla. And then you look at all the other games and all this, it's the same scheme that Zidane is rolling out, and that's the thing that we have example now. Be like, okay, like this doesn't work anymore, and part of the reason it doesn't work is because coaches have had enough time to scout it, whether it's Pablo Machin or Unzue or basically any coach in the post-game presser. Like, so many of them said, like, we know this is Real Madrid's weakness, we exploit it this way, and it's kind of embarrassing because it's so true. And I think they're even shocked that it works this well. But, I think the diamond worked last season because Zidane kind of threw it out of nowhere and no one knew what was coming. Like, no one knew how to deal with it. Isco was roaming everywhere, and it was tough for teams to deal with defensively. Now they just know they can pack the flanks, pack the box, just block a bunch of crosses and make one pass, and they're on the counterattack because Real Madrid just don't defend. Like, that's really easy to play against. I don't care if Barca 2009, if Brazil of the 70s, if Milan 80s, if any of them played in this scheme with all those great players, they would be easy to play against too. Like, there's no counter press, there's no ability to retain possession. Their attacks are random, they're predictable. All of those problems exist. And
okay, I mean,
you mentioned quickly, Diego, you mentioned like translating Zidane's post-game pressers. He says all these things that he says every week, and we're trying to talk ourselves into saying, okay, well, that doesn't matter what he says in the press conference because he's probably being really political, diplomatic, and behind the scenes, he hopefully has some clue of what's going on. Yeah. But then we talk ourselves out of talking ourselves into that, because then you see the pitch results and it's the same thing over and over again. Yeah. And Marcelo after the Celta game said, we don't know what's wrong. We just got to keep showing up and keep playing. It's hard for us. And when he says something like that, be like, do you really want to show up and keep doing the same thing over and over again? Is that really what you think? Anyways, that's my rant.
It's really interesting what you're saying. There's so many points to touch on. Now that you finish on Marcelo, I wanted to add Kroos' comments where he said, basically said, those who criticize us don't know anything about football. Yeah. Yet, continuing that same statement, he said, we are now fighting for Champions League spots. What do you make of those comments? I mean, the fact that you're fighting for Champions League spots is true. You have Villarreal and Sevilla side that are stood right behind you, I think down 2 points, with the top three, of course, escaping. Yet his initial, the first part of the comment where he says, those who criticize us know nothing about football, is that something that is expected from a Real Madrid player who just, lives and dies by his manager and his squad?
I think there's a lot of there was kind of mixed reactions to that tweet. One was people were like, "Oh,
it was a tweet." Sorry, right?
Yeah, it was a tweet. Yeah, some people were like, "You know what? Just shut your mouth and realize that you're one of the problems." I think those people are in the minority, and I think they're naive and a bit immature. I think most people, in a way, appreciated that Kroos actually had the balls to say something at least. Make a connection with the fans, and a lot of people thought that should be coming from Sergio Ramos. And that's fine. And I'm never one of those guys who blame players for not saying something on social media or posting something from their personal life. Look, we're all human. I don't. It doesn't bother me that Ramos is doing fashion stuff on Instagram. We all have lives. We're all human. It's not. It doesn't mean he's not taking it seriously at all. Like behind the scenes, I have no problem with that, but. I think Kroos gets a lot of criticism from people who don't look at the game holistically and understand it to its core. And while I think Kroos' tweet was semi-childish to kind of just throw a bunch of those fans under the bus, you know, in a way, his comment is justified and it's right, even if it wasn't maybe politically correct to say it that way, because Kroos is one of the smartest footballers on the pitch in the world. He's one of the best midfielders in the world. There's a reason why Guardiola wanted to have him so bad.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why, you know, after Xavi, I think he's one of the brainiacs of, you know, football. I think he gets a lot of criticism because of his defense and his perceived defensive duties. And someone had asked about this in a mailbag, and I wrote an entire article about this, because Kroos, one thing he does is he jogs back defensively and he doesn't help Marcelo at all. And I think that
who needs all the help in the world at this point?
Yeah, there's no question. And I think that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. I've noticed it a lot, and obviously I think it's a huge weakness of his. I think the other thing that people don't really understand is that Kroos, ever since this scheme changed to this diamond last season, Kroos has been asked to play a lot higher up the pitch. And forgive me, those Manager Madrid listeners who've already heard me say this, but when you look at the diamond, it's not symmetrical, because Modric is on the right, Kroos is on the left. It looks symmetrical on paper, but Modric's role on the right is to basically give his life to the right back and cover for him, provide an outlet from. He basically plays as a winger almost, and plays that role like almost better than a traditional winger because he's so good at what he does. On the left side, Kroos doesn't do that. He's higher up the pitch. He's there for verticality reasons to make plays, and he doesn't defend. So Marcelo has no one. And last year, this was masked because Casemiro and Isco both did a really good job to cover for Marcelo, and this year they're not doing that. So not only is Kroos not defending, which he wasn't anyway, now Casemiro and Isco aren't either. And Marcelo was already a left back who wasn't good defensively to begin with. And so he's alone, and Marcelo on his own is a recipe for disaster.
Are you guys going to qualify for Champions League?
I think it would be crazy if this run continued, don't you? Like it doesn't add up to me. What we do have going for us is that Sevilla have been also terrible, and they're the ones kind of breathing down our throat. Like Villarreal is up there now too. So I don't know, but
no, that's true. That's a plus. The fact that Sevilla is just highly unregular and inconsistent in their results. Yeah. Listen, I mean, if I can weigh in my opinion, it's the same as you. If everything returns back to normal, you of course would expect Madrid to be at least fighting for Champions League positions. Obviously, La Liga, I think, unless literally everything goes tits up, and it would be a completely historic achievement if Real Madrid would even be in a fight for La Liga title. I think that at this point we can discard Madrid from that conversation. But Champions League spots, I would, it would just be incredible to see them play Europa League next season.
Just quickly, one more thing before, because we talked enough about Real Madrid, I think, but you were talking about like the historical the point gap between Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah.
I'd also go back to this season, eerily similar to that 1999-2000 season where Real Madrid finished 5th in La Liga. And that was the last time we did bad domestically, like on a level of just complete atrociousness, was that season. And that was also during peak La Liga where Valencia were really good, Depor were really good. And it feels like La Liga this year feels that way, where Valencia is really good, Atletico is really good. And then you have a bunch of mid-table teams who are just really solid, like Eibar and Getafe and Girona and Celta.
Definitely.
So it feels that way. It's nice from a La Liga perspective. But, the interesting thing about this is, and I mentioned this last night too, is that that season Real Madrid somehow won the Champions League. Like they were complete garbage for 90% of the season, and then for the remaining 10-15%, they just flipped a switch. And Redondo, Raúl, Roberto Carlos, these guys just carried them, and they turned it up in the Champions League. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But, they absolutely. Yeah. It's just, and I remember that season. I would even go so far to say that the '97 season was the same. If I'm not mistaken, you'll know this better than me, but I think they were 7th in La Liga that year.
And that was the Mijatovic year, right?
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to look that up. That is crazy.
Look that up, when you get a chance, because I remember that as well, just being, overcome with joy that they were doing so bad in La Liga, but then seeing their Champions League form and results, it was just,
97, 98, they came 4th.
4th, okay.
Yeah.
Or I think at some point in the league they were in 7th position.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Something like that. But
sure. Okay.
But that's these are unusual times. Let's put it that way. Unpredictable times. I would love to have seen what the bookies had Madrid and Barca at the beginning of the season, because whoever was predicting this must be on his way to making some good money.
This is true.
Yeah.
Maybe we enter the Barca and the rest of La Liga discussion, open it up with a question. So we have a question from one of our patrons, and if you guys want to get different rewards for supporting us, or if you just want to support us in general, you like the show, you like us blabbering on patreon.com/Churros y Tácticas. You can pledge as little as $1 and up to $25, $50, $100, and you get rewards based on your pledge. So the first patron question is from Christopher Alex. He says, "Hey there. Question for Diego. What do you think of Barca's chances of winning the Champions League? I suddenly feel like Barca can win it after watching the amazing comeback yesterday against Real Sociedad, knowing these are the games where Barca lost points last season."
Yes, Alex. When was it? I don't think it was too long ago. It must have been, I'll go as far as say 2 months ago when you and I spoke on Churros y Tácticas, and I said, despite the fact that we're having a good run in La Liga, I still don't think that this team is capable of winning the Champions League. That has now changed.
It has not, or it has now changed?
It has now changed, absolutely.
Okay.
To take, and again, Alex here echoes my sentiments in terms of the display, the performance that I saw this team give last night in the Anoeta was something that, I was stunned. I was so incredibly, hugely impressed that I said at the end of the 90 minutes, I said, bring it on. Bring anybody, anything on. Whether it's Man City, calling out the big names, whichever team it is, there's no team to which this Barca side is inferior to. I fancy my chances against anyone. The spirit of the team spirit, the fight, la garra, como se dice aquí, the way they say in Spanish, the hunger, that not giving up, something that we attributed it to the Real Madrid side last season. We were just talking about it. That's something that I hadn't really seen before this season. The results were always there, and we always questioned the style of play, whether it was a Barca type of play that they were playing or not. And in most cases, it wasn't. Yet the results were always there. That's something that we couldn't argue with. But after last night, man, I don't know. I have goosebumps talking about it right now. I had chicken skin last night watching the match when I saw that just emphatic comeback that shocked me, because I was ready and I was tweeting it out. I said, I'm ready to take this loss. Okay, Anoeta is a stadium where we can't win. We haven't won there in a decade, and let this curse continue for all I care, because we're 16 points clear at worst case to our arch enemies, arch rivals in Real Madrid. I kind of made peace with it. In fact, the first 45 minutes, Anoeta or Real Sociedad deserved the lead, very much so. In fact, instead of 2-0, it should have been 3-0. That disallowed goal, I think it was from, was it William Jose who shot that?
Yeah, I think it was William Jose. Yeah.
It was, right? That should have been a goal. That should have stood. Yet, Paulinho gets his goal in, third top scorer on this Barca side, 8th top scorer in La Liga. Paulinho, who would have said it, gets the goal, 2-1. And the next half, the second half was just un recital. It was just an epic performance, a masterpiece, a masterclass of football, headed by the one and only, yours truly, the greatest footballer this world has ever produced, and Leo Messi. And the cherry on the cake, just stunning goals from Luis Suarez, who's proving that, hey, for all of you guys who counted me out, guess what? El Pistolero is back. Just an awesome match, man. I don't know if you got to see it, but
of course,
it was. Of course, you did.
A few things surprised me from both sides. One was Valverde's decision, like going into this bogey stadium that Barca just never wins at, and he decided to start Andre Gomes. And
sure.
And turns out Andre Gomes was fine. Like, he didn't do anything wrong, I don't think. Like he
didn't have the greatest of matches. He did nothing wrong.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. No, I think that's accurate. Like, he was fine. He wasn't he didn't cost Barca points or anything, and he wasn't great. I think Valverde said after the game that Iniesta had some slight discomfort or something, didn't want to risk it. Also, you mentioned something about the pitch being wet, and I don't know why Andre Gomes makes sense for the rain, but apparently he does. I
don't know. All I could say is that Gomes is there as to keep possession of the ball, to fight off defenders, to also attract defenders to him. Maybe with the pitch wet and not having the usual, say, wingers to accompany the front three, he was opting for maybe a slower paced game. In which case Gomes is the right player for that.
What surprised me from a Sociedad perspective was you're going up against Barca in a game where Januzaj, one of your best players this season, not really 100% to start. I was surprised he didn't start Oyarzabal. He started Canales, so this season Canales has been a black hole. And then it turns out Canales had one of his best games of the season.
Man, I was looking at that thinking of you, man, and you and all the Madridistas, yep.
Yeah, from being basically a black hole offensively all season, he had one of his best games. He was just cutting through Barca. He had an outrageous assist to Juanmi on the second goal. The pass was so perfect.
Great.
Hard to hit, hard to see. Great off the ball run from Juanmi. Little deflection, a little bit lucky, but to score. I think he was really good. And it's interesting because you looked at the first half, you looked at the way Sociedad was playing. They were pressing really well. Everyone from Willian Jose to Canales to Zurutuza, all these guys were playing really well. Yaramendi, phenomenal game, especially in the first half, because he was everywhere. He was doing a lot defensively. He had the most passes of anyone on the pitch, Barca, Sociedad combined, all of them. He was really good. But I think one of the warning signs I saw, despite all this, was that there was a lot of space in behind Kevin Rodriguez and even Odriozola on the other side. That early on Barca got, they got some breaks in between there with Sergio Roberto, Alba on the other side.
Exactly.
And you kind of saw foreshadowing. And then their first goal, the one just Barca scored, to pull, I think it was just before halftime, wasn't it? It was exactly that. It was breaking in behind both flanks because was it Paulinho? Who was it? It was Suarez, right?
Suarez to Paulinho.
Suarez to Paulinho, yeah. Paulinho making the run from the right side, Suarez on the left side, and it was basically those problems just... And then it got worse for them. But
what a goal! What a beautiful.
It was a finish. It was a beautiful finish.
Beautiful finish. Vermaelen on the assist there. That was Messi, of course. But Vermaelen also had a tip-top game, just to give him his well-deserved shout-out. Discussions going on now whether our starting center back should be Vermaelen and Umtiti and have Piqué on the bench.
Not going to happen, bro.
That's what I said. I was like, listen, that's not going to happen. I'm not taking anything away from Vermaelen, and I'm super happy that and the form in which he's in. But make no mistake, Pique Umtiti will be our 1 and 2 center backs, and Vermaelen and Yerry Mina will be 3 and 4 in that order. So, but it's good to know that we have we have a worthy substitute. I mean, that should be great news.
I mean, the fact that you had, out of basically forced necessity, Vermaelen had to come in. He did really well, and now you have extra cushion with Yerry Mina, who's, I haven't seen much of him, but apparently he's insanely promising. So,
yeah. We'll see. I'm very curious. I'm very curious to see how he will adapt, and less concerned about his dancing and just more see, because that's what all the papers here talk about. Of course, will he be able to dance? Will he be allowed to dance?
Did they have the presentation for him? Yeah, he did, because he had that when he took his shoes off.
Took his shoes off.
Did he do any dribbling in that one, or any juggling?
Yeah, I saw him a little bit with do a couple of headers, keepy uppies. Not too much. Okay. Obviously not with his feet, because he wasn't wearing shoes. So yeah.
That's that's actually a great move if you're not good at juggling. Just take your shoes off in the presentation. Sorry, like this. Any other Barca stuff?
I'll tell you what, man. I do actually, and I have I just forgot. I have a quote here that I have to read out. So, in closing this Barca Real Sociedad Barca match, I wanted to read out a quote that I read today in support of journalists and journalism everywhere. Great journalism. There was a piece that I read this morning about this game that I thought, man, I got to start Churros y Tácticas, or the Barca discussion with this, and I'll end it with it. And then I want to touch on another topic, just real quick, real brief, that we discussed last week with regards to Coutinho and the price and Barca's business model. But let me read out. It's very quick. Mm-hmm. The author of this piece is Luis Bucheres, who's a journalist for La Vanguardia, or and other media outlets as well. But he wrote this morning the following, and I'm translating, so excuse me if this is not translated all to the 100% correct grammatical and vocabulary use. But he wrote, "There are boats that never leave the Bermuda Triangle, toads that never grow up to becoming a prince, and the portrait of Dorian Gray continues to age. But the curse of Barca and Anoeta has come to an end 8 years later. Valverde's team can cope with anything, and comebacks like the one achieved under the reign of San Sebastian confirm him as an aspirant to everything, aspirante, so as a contender to everything. Valverde's team can cope with anything." Sorry, that is it actually. Now we repeated this.
You're making up more stuff as you go.
But I thought that was a nice way to kind of give introduction, or in this case, to give a conclusion to that. And it also answers the question that our Patreon asked earlier. I think it was Alex, in terms of, do you see Barca contend in the Champions League? I see them, be favorites to win everything this league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On to Coutinho,
mm-hmm.
and I'll keep this as brief as possible. You cut me off if this is going too long, but I was heavily scrutinized by a family member, one of my own, not only culé, but also my nephew. And he said, Diego, and I should say a loyal and adamant listener of this podcast.
That's terrible. Your cool Uncle Jeopardy, your status is in jeopardy.
He said, Diego. I said, what's going on? Did you enjoy the podcast? He said, I didn't. He said, you hugely disappointed me. I can't believe you call yourself culé and you go out there, you talk to your man Kiyan, and buckle under the pressure that Barca has now adapted or become, a copied version of Real Madrid and their business model in terms of, fichando galácticos, in terms of buying star players, etc. And I said, well, hold on a second. I said, well, look at what we've been doing over the past years, and it's nothing new that Barca, the best players in the world, have always played for Barca, but in particular, if you look at the past few years, and this one in particular, I mean, the prices are going up, and Barca's spending has also gone up. And he said, yeah, but take this step by step. And I have to give him credit for this. He said, what did we sell Neymar for? I said, well, the famous 222 million, of course. Correct. Now, how much did we buy Dembélé and Coutinho for? And I said, well, 145 and 160, respectively. He says, see, that is the mistake that not only you make, but all of the media outlets. And he's right. Because what did we pay Fijo? What were the fixed costs? The fixed cost was 105 for Dembélé and 120 for Coutinho. If you add those two figures, you end up with how much, Kiyan?
I don't know. Tell me.
225 million. Mm-hmm. 225 million were the fixed price for these two players. In other words, 3 million more than what we received cold hard cash in the Neymar deal.
Sure.
Now, of course, the variables are in play. Now, the variables, and that's immediately I brought that up. Yeah, I was like, yeah, but what about the variables? He said, well, what about the variables? The variables are something that you achieve over time. Now, the variables consist of how many matches you play. I think in Coutinho's case, it was 20, something like that. For the first 20 matches, you pay 5 million. The next 100 matches, you pay an additional X amount. I don't remember the exact amount.
If you win certain trophies, it's more.
And the trophies, etc. Right? Yeah. My point being, or his point being, I should say, was that this season already, neither Dembélé nor Coutinho will get their prize, or I should say, Dortmund or Liverpool will get the variable money for matches played. Dembélé because he's been injured, and Coutinho because there's not enough matches left this season. So already we're looking in terms of, for the bonus money for that will not be paid over the summer, but the next summer. Now, in Coutinho's case, the Champions League is not a trophy that he can win because he's ineligible. So already also that, we're not looking if Barca wins it, not this season, but the next, we're looking for next season. In terms of league, yes, La Liga, they can pay prize money, but it's all, and he's an accountant. He works in contabilidad, right? He's an accountant. So he was like, this is all kind of normal business. It's you get money in and you invest that money directly into two products in this case. And for a big club the likes of Barca, it's nothing uncommon to pay an additional X amount over several years. So when we take this case in particular, Neymar for Coutinho and Dembélé, and compare that to, say, the Galácticos, which is something you and I discussed as well, he said it's totally different because when Florentino brought in the Galácticos, Kaká, Benzema, and Ronaldo, he said they didn't sell any players that season. That was, or there was not a trade-off of exact same values in that sense. He's like, he just went out and he got those three players in, spending a huge amount of money in a kind of inexplicable way. He said, where were the talks then? Why was there no fuss kicking up the same way that it's happening now in this case? And he said that's very unfair, and I hope that you address that in your next talk with Kiyan.
One of the 2009 spending spree was also completely necessary, and I mean you kind of see the fruits of it now because Ronaldo, Alonso, both of those guys were huge, massive signings for us. Ronaldo for obvious reasons. Alonso was insanely important in the Decimo run. And then, he was also at the time the only central midfielder not named Xavi or Iniesta who could help us. Basically compete with Barca's midfield. And Benzema's been very important. He's been a huge club servant over the years. Kaká was a bust. It would have worked out better if we just kept Robin. He's not wrong about the net spending because ultimately that's what matters. And, Real Madrid, for example, a lot of people were saying we shouldn't buy Mbappe, he's too expensive, and no one was kind of looking at the fact that we haven't spent money in like 3 years. Like we just haven't. We've been in a positive net spend for so long because we've been grooming young players, and that was it. I think your nephew's not wrong, but I think if I remember correctly, your concern was not so much about money, but it was also because you were worried about the development of people like Denis Suarez, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There's the whole cantera aspect, of course, which we delved into later, but yeah. His beef was more with me as on a side note, but with major media outlets that throw the figures of 160 and 145 in the air, like as if that's a done deal. And talk about, I mean, even in Madrid, there was a little campaign talking about it was black money that Barca was spending, 300 plus million all under the table, black dark money, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I would also say like net spend is something that most people don't look at, and obviously there's a necessity. If you sell Neymar for X amount of money, then you need to replace him. And you're going to overpay. That's just the nature of having this much money and it being public knowledge. You know, it's also true that in previous years, I think Barcelona's spending has been kind of under talked about. Like, you know, you've had a lot of big summers before, and whether it was the Neymar year, whether it was the Luis Suarez year, you go back to the Ibrahimovic year. How much did you guys spend? You spent a lot of money.
40 plus Eto, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, so anyways, it's not a huge deal, but I think the concern here was less about money, because in this day and age, we know that money is going to get spent. It doesn't matter what team you are, and who you support, what your philosophy, what your identity is. You're going to spend a lot of money. This season has really been crazy. Your season was the highest spending year of all time, and you know, Guardiola spent an insane amount of money, Mourinho spent an insane amount of money, and that's just the nature of today's market. But I think your concern was less to do with finances.
It was. Yeah.
Okay, 2 quick questions, Diego, from patrons, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Nice.
Ivan Garcia says, Diego, what are your 3 favorite Dutch players ever that have played in La Liga?
Oh, man, this is a great question. Love questions like this. Makes me want to kick back and just reminisce on the good old days. But when the Dutch had an impact in world football, my God. Obviously, it would have to be number 1, Johan Cruyff, for everything that he stood for with Holland, but of course in particular in Barca, and the history and the philosophy, the achievements. It's got to be there, number 1. Number 2, and this might be an unpopular decision, but it's more. This is one that I make more with the heart than the mind, but would be Patrick Kluivert, one of my all-time favorite footballers, and just such a joy to watch. I loved his the way he would maneuver. I always kind of compare him to the Matrix movie, the first Matrix movie, when he would go up for a header. He would have this acrobatic, kind of like Sean Kemp. Kiyan, you know your basketball, right?
Wow,
I mean,
a Kluivert Sean Kemp cross-reference. Wow, I never saw that coming.
It's like when Sean Kemp would go up for a dunk, he wouldn't just dunk it. His legs would be flopping all over the place. He would look so stylish. Well, that is Kluivert for me. That, you know, when he would go up for a header, he would be suspended in the air, and you could feel the camera just like swoop around him at a 300-degree angle, and then he would header the ball in the back of the net. He had such amazing first control, first touch, so good on the ball and off the ball that for me, even though his time here at Barca ended on a bit of a sour note, he was, you know, a big fan of opium. I think he was a part owner of the club down in the Barceloneta. He was seen out a little bit too often. I'll put him at number 2, and I mean I have to put Ronald Koeman at number 3, of course, the winner of our first Champions League. That goal in the 18th minute or something.
No love for Frank Rijkaard.
Oh man, Rijkaard. Well, as manager, of course, yeah. In fact, I'm going to try to interview him. I'm trying to interview him. So, but you know, he wasn't a player. He of course was a great manager.
He did have one season at Zaragoza.
Yeah. But I think
you're right. As a player,
yeah. And he wanted to. I mean, Cruyff actually tried to get him to come over here, and he chose Milan in the end. The same for Bergkamp, for that matter. You know, oh my God, if I wish Bergkamp would have played at Barca, it would have been amazing. But that's a tough one. I mean, a lot of great Dutch players in Barca's history, of course. But right now, top of my head, those would be my top 3.
You want to know my top 3?
Yeah, please. I'd love to, yeah.
Ruud van Nistelrooy.
So this is for Madrid, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Ruud van Nistelrooy. Clarence Seedorf.
Yeah, I'll put him at number 1, man.
And Royston Drenthe. Greatest rapper alive. And shout out to Arjen Robben, obviously. Even though he never played for Real Madrid, he played one season at Barca. I was a huge Davids fan, like all my life.
Oh, yeah. You half a season at Barca, man.
Was it half a season? And if I remember correctly, it was a solid impact for his age. And yeah,
it's one of the biggest. I mean, one of the most successful winter signings ever, hands down. Yeah.
Okay,
it's a shame he didn't stay on. I remember he was demanding crazy stuff though. I had a link to his agent at the time, and that person was telling me everything that Davids was demanding to stay, and they were just like, dude, no, sorry, you gotta just. No. Well, then he went to Inter, right?
After that, he went to Inter. Yeah, he only played 14 times for Inter. Then he went to Tottenham for a couple of years, back to Ajax, and he pretty much after that he just fell off the earth. But last question. It's going to deviate us from Real and Barca. Iman Garcia also says, "What do you guys think of Paco Jemez? In general, people have a good opinion about him, but it seems like he's collecting a lot of big losses throughout his career. But still, first division teams seem to believe in his ability as a coach. I don't get what the fascination with so many teams still falling for the trap of bringing Paco Jemez in. It's like if you couple Las Palmas together with Paco Jemez, essentially you give birth to what happened in Girona this weekend, the 6-0.
It's crazy. Is it you often this is a saying that I hear you often say. Fake it until you make it. And I kind of feel that's what Paco Jemez does. He comes across as such a confident, authoritative manager who even, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he once name himself the Manchester United successor?
I don't know about this, but I'm not surprised.
I think so. I think it was Paco Jemez. But, and it's just been failing team after team after team. And like you said, I'm not really sure why people still, porque apuestan por él, why they still keep, putting their chips on him. But there he is. And I think, maybe a lot has to do with his authoritative style of at least communicating. Whenever he's faced in the press conference, he doesn't look very happy. And I guess the results, either the results are a reason for that or he's just a bit of a sour guy.
Well, he's been living up that reputation for a while when he had at Rayo. When Rayo, under him, like peak Rayo, was actually like one of the few teams, even in I think it was the Guardiola era, right, that actually went toe to toe with Barca in possession. Like it was crazy. They kept the ball, and I think a lot of people admired that. But defensively, his teams have generally been a complete mess. Like he has zero regard for defense. Zero. Like he does not care. Whether it was who was it last season? Was it Girona? No, sorry, not Girona. Gijon. No, sorry, Granada.
No.
Granada. Wasn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Granada.
Okay, I don't know now.
All these bad teams are the same to me. It was the same. And you watched the 6-0 on the weekend. It was as if, like, it started with the first goal that they conceded. It was a suicidal line from Las Palmas. Momo just decided he doesn't want to track back. And then Castellano comes in with like this leg-breaking cleats to leg challenge and then was wondering why he gave up the penalty. He's like, what? I didn't do anything. And then all the goals they conceded, it's as if Girona were playing like an amateur 6-year-old on FIFA. Like that's what it felt like. It was that embarrassing. It was even for Las Palmas and Paco Jemez, it was on another level.
Not taking anything away of an inspired Girona side, of course, who continues to raise eyebrows and drop jaws.
Yeah, no, they've been really good. As always, we don't have time to talk about the rest of La Liga. But where's our part 2? This is our part 2, I guess. Part 3 next Monday. We'll try to squeeze more content in, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
we need to. Kiyan, please do not wake up earlier. Do not. For all of your listeners, Kiyan to call him an early bird is an understatement. You need to rest, my friend, and let's. We squeeze more content in, but let it be later in the day or night for me than earlier for you.
We'll figure it out.
Because your brain needs some rest. But also, I just want to give a big thank you and shout out to all of the listeners who continue to grow on this awesome podcast, and really appreciative of all the great feedback we've been getting. And Kiyan and I have been talking about how to spice up the show as well, and we'll continue to have these discussions as as time progresses and we continue to produce the show, hopefully also more frequently, as we were mentioning. But I'm just feel very lucky. I feel very happy with what we're doing, and this is a new year, and I want to continue with the good vibes and increase the distance, the gap on Madrid.
Exciting times from a Churros y Tácticas standpoint. Forget all the disaster that's happening on the field. But Churros y Tácticas, we're having fun. We're excited about the direction of the show. If ever you guys have any suggestions or anything, at This Is D-Spot on Twitter, at Kiyan So on Twitter, get at us. Become a patron. $1 a month. That's like what, a flavor shot at Starbucks a month that you sacrifice, right? That's not bad. It's pretty cheap.
You're the coffee man. I'll leave that one to you.
At any rate, Diego, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
And until next time, thank you, my friend.
Likewise. Cheers, Kiyan.